Yeah. Yeah.
Need a mic so we can play some music for people. Need to find some songs about money.
Yeah. We were gonna do the Easter egg.
Good evening. First of all, I want to thank everyone for joining us here tonight, whether you're in person, online, or on air. Your participation in this decision-making process is greatly appreciated. First, let me thank the commissioners in the room. Commissioner Langdon is here, as well as Vice Mayor Stokes, former Commissioner Vanessa Carazone, as well as former Commissioner Jill Luke. We appreciate, and former Commissioner Linda Yates. Hey, Sam, I didn't see you there. Apologies. We also want to give a special hello to Commissioner Emmerich, who is still home recovering. We wish him a speedy recovery. But we are grateful that the entire commission allowed us to explore every option for this topic that we're here to talk about in the least painful way possible, and that's the Northport Police Department headquarters. As we begin, the event will consist of a presentation by our team and stakeholders, and we are happy to receive questions and comments from the public at the microphone to my left. Just line up and we'll go through your comments as you have them until we are complete. So today's meeting is the next in the line of a series of public conversations that we have had to discuss the challenges of building a new police headquarters in our city. But before we go forward, let's go back. Let me get this slide up here. Yeah. What we have here is the Customer Bill of Rights. This is not a new Bill of Rights for the city, but it is important that we sort of refocus on and make sure people understand what we're doing here tonight. The first right says we have a partnership, and we will support a philosophy of building partnerships with our cities and customers. We will develop solutions focused on the overall benefits to the community, not just individuals. Although we may not always agree on a particular solution, we will always listen to you. I think that's what you're going to hear tonight, as you have the opportunity to ask questions not only to myself, but to our team. It will be an interactive event tonight where they will give you different viewpoints and experiences from their own subject matter expertise. So we all know that last year Northport was named the second fastest growing city in the country. That has not slowed down. Our population growth has continued. And just this week, we were named by MoneyGeek as the #1 best desirable small city. That's for a city under 100,000 people, as well as #7 for safe and affordability. To bring everyone up to speed, last summer, the commission approved a purchase of 19 acres of land for our particular news station. This was based on what the consultant presented as a model of a $100,000 model, which our police will get into more details shortly. They also gave direction for us to begin 30% of the design plans to be completed. And that's where we are now with the particular station. Before police comes up, I just want to say that some of the more recent data and information reflect a project of $122 million. That's the number that everyone has heard. That number has shelf space for build-outs to the year of 2065. Another scaled-down version of the project was for $100 million that had a build-out of 2050. The commission has twice supported the full model of $122 million, and we appreciate their support. We know that funding it and the ways that we have proposed to be funding it are a challenge not only for us, but for you and for everyone who's listening. As of now, as it relates to the $100 million that we are looking at for the 2050 model, we are proposing $35 million in a bond referendum that would affect your millage rate as property owners. We're also proposing $50 million in surtax that would not affect your dollars, as that 1 cent penny tax is paid and collected through the county. We have heard concerns and comments and questions regarding the surtax and the fact that the headquarters was not on the list that was submitted when surtax was passed. The list that surtax was used when it was passed is not a static list. Not only does Northport, but all the other municipalities in this area are able to move projects as necessary. If you look at the resolution that we signed for our surtax, which is Resolution 22-R12, Section 3.04 says the City Commission may alter or amend the project list in the event that the City Commission finds that such a change is in the public interest and provided all projects are consistent with the requirements of Florida Statute Section 212.0552. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. We are having conversations, and we want to hear those people who have concerns about that. The meeting that we have scheduled publicly is April 2nd. It's with the Board of the Chamber of Commerce. We are going to answer their questions there as we proceed forward and hopefully bring some clarity to why we're doing what we're doing if there are still any remaining. We have also suggested that the City Commission move Phase 2 of Price Boulevard widening from the end of Surtax 4 in the years 2035 and 2039 to the beginning of Surtax 5 in 2040 to free up available funds. And yes, we know that Surtax 5 has not been approved. It was passed in 2022, Surtax 4, by 78% of the vote and has been in existence for 35 years to date. This does not include anything with widening of Price Boulevard Phase 1, which is ongoing right now as we speak. We are still on track with that project. We still believe that that project will be done on budget and on time. City staff is currently doing deeper dives into some of the properties that were mentioned. If you heard us speak in some of the other meetings that we've had, this is our way of making sure that we put everything on the table. When we say we are trying to find funding for this particular project, that should tell you how important it is if the city is thinking of selling off some of its assets that it does not use or has not been able to use in ways that it saw fit. That, combined with what we do with the ultimate decision with the current police station, should bring us close to the $100 million mark, which I said earlier. It is not easy to get there. We are figuring it out right now. We are being transparent with you because you are actually seeing the sausage being made as we speak. This is a tough topic. I'm grateful for everyone who is here, and we look forward to your feedback. And now I'm going to turn it over to the chief, and he's going to start with his presentation, and we will go through all of our presenters, and then we'll ask questions and comments at the end.
Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Todd Garrison, your Chief of Police. As your Chief,
Put your mic on.
over the years, our city has grown significantly in both population and geographic size. The growth, while positive, has brought few new challenges in maintaining the peace and security that are the hallmarks of our community. Our current police station has served us well, but was designed with no room for growth. And unfortunately, we've long reached a point where it no longer meets our needs or standards for effective law enforcement. We are operating out of a facility that was built for a different era, with significantly fewer officers and less sophisticated technology. Our staff does a phenomenal job with the resources that they have, but they're often hampered by the limitations of our current space. A new, larger police station is not just a building, it's an investment in our community and into our future. It will provide us with the necessary space to expand our workforce, allowing us to increase patrols and effective response times. It will offer the infrastructure to house modern technology and equipment, enhancing our ability to solve crimes and protect our citizens. This project is about more than just bricks and mortar. It's about building a foundation for a safer and more secure community. It's about demonstrating our commitment to law enforcement and to public safety. And it's about ensuring that our police department members have the tools and resources to meet the challenges of today and tomorrow. This community and commission have greatly supported their police department in the past, and in doing so has helped create a very safe, low-crime community that we all love to call home. However, we need to remind ourselves that as population increases, there's typically an uptick in crime rates. More people can mean opportunities for crime to occur simply because of increased interactions between individuals. This can lead to a rise in both property crimes like theft and violent crimes. The ability of law enforcement and public services to adapt to growth is crucial. This includes ensuring adequate policing resources, employing modern crime prevention techniques, and maintaining a strong community police relationship. Failure to adapt can result in higher crime rates, while effective adaptation can enhance public safety. We understand that this is a significant undertaking, and we did not make this request lightly. Nearly 6 years ago, on the day that I was sworn in, being appointed as your police chief, I was presented with a critical situation that we were out of room at the police department. Since then, 2 independent firms have conducted space needs studies and have provided factual data that have proven that we need a larger facility. Several options were carefully considered, from expanding our current facility, from building substations throughout to meet the growing demand, or building new, larger headquarters. These options were all presented to the commission, and after their direction, we purchased land and began the process of a 30% design of a new facility. I want to emphasize one simple point, that while growth can present challenges to public safety, proactive and inclusive strategies can mitigate these risks. Together, we can build a safer, stronger community for ourselves and our future generations. So we hear about staffing. All right. Okay. We hear, oh, why do we need a larger facility when the police officers should be out there driving around in their cars? I get that. A uniformed police officer, a uniformed car, is the most visible component of any police department. But behind the scenes or inside the brick and mortar are a lot of different specialty units. And on this list, you know, we talk about the administration, the command, we talk about detectives, your crime analysts. We have enhanced police services also that we have that are working in this building. We have a real-time intelligence center. We have digital forensics. You know, in today's day and age, everybody has multiple pieces of electronic devices, right? And anytime that we are conducting any type of crime or criminal investigation, those devices get analyzed. Well, we need space to analyze that equipment. That is a growing area of law enforcement. We have crime scene forensics, evidence storage, property and evidence. Body cameras is a huge issue. That's a growing area of concern for law enforcement. But there's a lot to what's inside a police department. And on this list, you can see that there's more than just that uniform car that's driving around. That uniform car is the backbone of any law enforcement agency. They are the most visible. However, there's a lot of people behind the scenes that are helping make this community safe. I'm going to turn it over to the director.
Good evening, everyone. Our priority in human resources is to support all our city departments with their employee needs to include recruitment, staffing, and talent acquisition. Northport Police Department itself has grown significantly over the years. From 2005, when we were at a workforce over there of 109, we are now at 196. A total growth in that time, 87 positions. So as the community continues to grow, appropriate staffing levels are crucial to provide a safe community for all of our residents. The city successfully applied for and has been approved for the COPS grant. COPS stands for Community Oriented Policing Services. This grant amounts to $1.25 million over the course of 3 years and will be used for hiring 10 new police officers. While we know the need is there, it hasn't always been easy to attract the best. In the wake of a post-COVID world, tight labor markets for all types of jobs, an increased concern for officer safety in the field, and also a continued difficulty in filling 911 telecom jobs, HR and the Northport Police Department have worked hard together to try to retain the best talent we can for all of you. We've participated in a lot of traditional job fairs, career events in the area, and also traveled across the state to try to get the best we can. We've used social media outlets, had aggressive PR programs to try to get folks to come here and take our jobs because, like I said, we've got staffing levels that are very challenging. The bottom line is the city's competing with everyone else for these same candidates in a very tight market of available and quality applicants. So in order to stay competitive, the city has had to address salaries, which had fallen below many of the agencies regionally with whom we compete for this pool of candidates in our tight market. We are grateful to the Commission's recent past actions as they allowed the city to work with the union before official negotiations were scheduled to start. We were able to return to the table with representatives of our police union last year to negotiate salary adjustments to sworn and telecom personnel. Making these adjustments were important for attracting and retaining the appropriate staffing levels for our police department. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can I have the growth chart up? In touching upon the growth that Director McDade from Human Resources was talking about, what is depicted above here is actually the growth chart of our police department headquarters in staffing. So as you see in 2005, it started off with 79 sworn and 30 support staff. And in 2006, which was the next bar there, was 103 with 30 support staff. That is the time that we moved into the current police headquarters. And as you can see down to 2023, we're currently at 144 sworn and 52 support staff. As you can see through the years from 2006 all the way through 2015, the agency became very stagnant in growth, or expanding. That was during a lot of times as the city was experiencing, and the whole country was experiencing a recession during that time. However, in reviewing the actual population between 2006 and 2015, the city grew by 22,000 residents. Sorry. 22,000 residents. You want me to take it off, Josh? 22,000 residents between 2006 to 2015 had grown through the city, but yet again, the department stayed at the same levels of a 2006 staffing. So Chief Garrison had spoken about 2 firms have done a comprehensive study on the police department. The most recent is the Shingle Schultz, who we hired, started this journey back in late 22 and early 2023. There takes a lot of staff study to go into that. They bring a whole team down. They have done various interviews. They've done inspections of the current headquarters, all of our substations, which we currently have at Northport Boulevard and at Wellham Park, all the way down to what supplies or storage we use to even cargo shipping containers in our fleet department that we use to store car seats for our vehicles that we purchased and we resell them, that actually we have to store them. So they took all of that, met with all of our staff to determine this. And this is several months. And then do a staffing study needs as well for your growth. They take your population, they take your calls for service times. All of that plays your response times. All of that plays a factor. Your size of your city, 104 square miles. Your infrastructure, your response times, which your infrastructure plays a hinder. They took all of that, which they are the experts at, and conducted their feasibility study for our staffing study and space needs. And that team is here today, Shingle Schultz and their team, to ask any questions on these charts. But these are the charts here that show, and I have kind of circled there. You guys should have those in front of you. But as you can see, we zoom in, thank you so much. 2025, where you're seeing here is that they're saying pretty much our sworn staff should be at 162, civilian staff at 65. And pretty much it gives a roadmap of where the city needs to go to keep up with the demand of the population, the calls for service in our city. Right now, we're sitting at 144 officers and 52 civilian staff. So we are approaching that, but it kind of tells you, it's like, hey, you need to be hiring 12 officers up until 2025, and after 25, you need to go up to 15 officers per year with your population. And there's other factors there. There's the FBI's benchmark. Now, the FBI's benchmark is a factor that they take in, but it's not an absolute, because they use all these other factors. Again, your calls for service, your response times, the unencumbered time of an officer when he's not on a call versus when he's on a call. All of that plays a factor. But they use these to gauge. Now, 2 officers per 1,000 is what FBI uses as a benchmark. So if you take your population per 1,000, it's 2 officers. So the benchmark for the FBI would say 203, but the data that the firm's showing is 216 where we should be at. But it's a gauge. You should be in between there is what they're saying. So this kind of gives a roadmap for law enforcement to project into the future for growth. And again, the firm provided a current status of our police department of the 180 and 131. Again, that was back in 2022. Now we're in 23. But midterm in 2035, the projection is that we will be 371 total with 265 sworn officers and 106 civilian staff. Taking us into 2050, we'll be 561 total with 401 sworn and 160 civilians. And in the long term, taking you into 2070, we would be at 922 total staff with 659 sworn officers and 263 civilians, support staff. This here is our budget details of our new police department headquarters, comparing it to our current, kind of gives you the years of growth, cost that comes in here to put things in perspective. Our current building was 32,000 square feet. And again, when we moved in, we were 79 officers and 30 support staff. It cost approximately $12 million to build back then for our current police headquarters. The proposed new headquarters today is 108,000 square feet. We'll round it to 109, so to speak, with 30,000 square feet of shell space. That construction cost, as the city manager said, is $100 million, with other project costs in there is the $22,569,000, which brings us to that $122 million number. Again, this was another, people were asked, a lot of questions about, did we look at everything? Did the team look at everything? And we did, like Chief Garrison said. Substations, we looked at multiple substations, building in place, which kind of shows you here, the staff, the firm did look at what would it cost to build in place with the current facility we have now. And they can speak, again, to this, the team, but when they do their study, you find out that it actually costs more to build in place and to add, because the current facility is not to current building codes for hardening. So if you add on, you have to turn that whole building back into a hardened building. And again, they can explain into that, not to get in depth, but as you can see here, it depicts that you see it actually costs more to build in place. So the benefit of going to new construction was a new location, it's cheaper, and you get a whole new building for the city to utilize, because we are not the only department that is struggling with space. Neighborhood Development Services, Parks and Recs, they're all struggling with space needs. So there is a benefit to the city for vacating that current headquarters and giving it to another department of the city. And over here, as you've seen, this is an aerial view of the proposed site that the city had purchased. Well, it's not proposed, we purchased the city, but this is the proposed aerial of what the current headquarters or proposed headquarters would look like. And basically what shows here, this is Toledo Blade, which is, if we were going to the right here, basically becomes Nestor Court, and then further down the road is Tropicare. If you're going out from Toledo Blade and I-75, the land on the left-hand side would start where the road goes from 4 lanes down to 2 lanes, and then it's on the left-hand side. And that goes all the way up to just before Nestor Court. And with that, I will turn it over to Director Williams.
Good evening. I'm Kim Williams. I'm the city's finance director. Thank you all for being here with us this evening. You should have seen this example that we provided both out front and in here, and this is my first slide. We wanted to provide an example of the impact on property tax for a household in Northport. of the proposed capital improvement $35 million bonds. So what this provides you is for a household with $200,000 taxable value. The change to their property tax will be $51 annually. And so hopefully that is helpful in just putting this into perspective. Next up, if we can, oh, I have it. Okay, so next up, what is our debt position? So currently Northport has $45 million in outstanding long-term debt. That's actually a very low amount for a government of our size. That fact was actually documented last month by Moody's, which is one of the big three credit rating agencies. They actually put out an issuer comment, and that was on February 23rd. If anybody's interested, fascinating reading, of course, but what I'll tell you what it says is it documents Northport's long-term liability ratio at 145%. So what that represents is if you take all of our long-term debt, you add our pension liabilities, and then you divide it by our revenue. This is what our ratio is, 145%, and how that compares to the median of AA-rated cities and counties, which is what we are. We're at 145%, and the median is at 244.8%. So what that tells you is they're actually 69% higher than Northport's debt ratio. And then I have one more topic. Oh, I went the wrong way. Okay, so impact fees. We've heard questions, why aren't we paying for this project with law enforcement impact fees? So impact fees are not easily leveraged, and what that means, that revenue source is unstable. It depends largely on development activity, economic activity. It can be cyclical, it can change depending on economic cycles, it fluctuates. So what that means is we're not able to, it would be very difficult to either issue bonds with that revenue as the source that's going to pay the debt service, or to get a bank loan or anything like that with that revenue source. In addition to that, impact fees would need to be increased very significantly for a large number of years to be able to support a significant capital improvement such as this. And in that event, there are other expenses that are being covered by impact fees that would need to move to the general fund. Some of that is our police station out at West Villages is being paid for by impact fees. All of the police cars for new officers are paid for by impact fees. And that is all I have. And I'm going to turn it over to Elena Ray, and she's going to talk a little bit more about impact fees.
Good evening. So I do want to clarify that the only impact fees that are going to pay for the Welland Park station are the Welland Park impact fees. So those fees that are paid for within the Welland Park development. But impact fees are under strict limitations by the state of Florida. We are restricted as to what we can charge for new development and when we can raise those fees. So we are, in most cases, we are charging 100% of what we are allowed to charge by the state of Florida. However, we also hear, why doesn't growth pay for growth? And let me make it very clear, single-family development outside of master plan communities will never pay for itself. It will always cost more in services for that type of low-density development than we will receive in impact fees. Commercial, industrial type development pays for itself and also pays more than what they receive in city services. So we would have to collect and save impact fees for decades to pay for all of the city's infrastructure needs. Also, we deal with the issue that for many years, the city did not charge 100% of what they could have charged for impact fees, especially during the recession time and afterwards. So we are in a deficit situation where for many, many years previously, and going back all the way to the creation of the city in 1956, the city wasn't always investing what it needed to in the infrastructure. So we're playing catch up. And because most of our development currently is low density, single family on pre-platted lots, those impact fees will never pay for all of the infrastructure needs that the city has. So we could never pay for a new facility like this without saving for decades in advance. And of course, that prohibits us from taking care of those growth needs now. I'm going to turn it back over to Deputy Chief.
Thank you. And at this time, I'd like to call up the Shingle Schultz team, architectural firm team, Aaron Jacobson and Dean Roberts, to talk about the facility construction.
Thank you. I'm Aaron Jacobson, architect with Shingle Schultz, and I'm here with Dean Roberts from MWL, our public safety expert. And we've worked, do you have the site plan you want to pull up? We've worked with the police department to develop this site plan that you can see here on the screen and to my left. On that image to the right-hand side is north. So going Toledo Blade is facing northbound there. So as I talk about the facility coming off of Toledo Blade, you have about 108,000 square foot, 109,000 square foot headquarters building, 3 stories, which has that 30,000 square foot of shell space to accommodate the future needs of the department. A little bit further to the west of the building, there's some covered parking areas, a central energy plant that will house the generators that are required for a facility, an essential facility like this, to ensure that it can stay operational during any kind of major event that occurs. There's also a fueling station just a little bit further to the west of that. And then you have about roughly a 12,000 square foot SRT and upfit garage so that they can take care of all of their command vehicles and get all the patrol cars up ready to go and be out on the streets to protect and serve the community. There's also a police evidence impound building, and all of that is kind of stationed on the northern end of the site that the city had purchased, roughly about 11 to 12 acres worth of development that really does accommodate all the future growth and the needs of the city. Projects of this size, we've seen in our experience that when they go out and we work with our CM partner, that we try to have about 50–60% of the construction costs will come back to the community that they serve. It's not a guarantee, but it's something that we have goals that set to really kind of feed the communities that are investing in departments like the police department. You want to go? What was the next thing? You want to let me talk about? Yeah. My apologies. Dean Roberts.
Yes, hello. So I think the firm that we're is a firm called MWL. We're a national firm, and we specialize in public safety buildings. And we've actually done more of those than anybody in North America, and all but 2 states. We're still 2 states that have eluded us. But what we've learned over decades of doing this kind of work is you really got to collect the facts so that the decision makers can make good decisions. And what I'm specifically speaking about here is the importance of understanding the projected growth of the population for the community. That's a really important factor. But it's also important to recognize that that growth drives calls for service. Calls for service is essentially a measure of workload that the police department has to respond to with their staff. And so the more calls for service there are, which is a provable fact based on population, and we've looked at the historical data for this community and we've compared it with other communities so that we're being as realistic and fact-based as we can to think about the future. And there is a bright future for Northport. There's going to be so much growth. I've been doing this for almost 4 decades. This community is the fastest growing for the longest period of time of any community I've ever worked in. And so when we find statistics and facts like that, it tells me to slow down, be sure we get the facts straight and in order, because there's going to be a lot of growth. And so the statistics that the deputy chief was talking about, growing from near term to midterm to long term in terms of the police staff, is based on some very careful assessment of the facts. And it's almost hard to believe the extent of growth that's going to occur until you look at the fact that Northport is 100 square miles, 30% built out. Oh my goodness. There is so much potential for growth here that we really got to be careful that we do a deep dive of the fact-based data so that we can accurately project the future growth. Because the future growth of staff and the duties they carry out is the biggest driver of the amount of space they need. That's a key fact that we've learned from doing these kind of projects for a long time. So when we look at population growth, which is not projected by us, it's actually, there's an organization called Bieber, which has this great credentials across the state of Florida, and they've looked at Northport and the growth that's anticipated to come. We take that data that they've developed that's very fact-based, we turn that into those factors that the chief was talking about. How many people does the police department need to provide the service to respond to calls for service? And there's some kind of asset test to how well we're doing that he highlighted. It's response times. If our response times are falling outside of the preferred delivery that the police department is targeting, what that is telling us, we don't have enough people to cover the duties of all these calls for service. And that's the kind of proof that we need to continue to step up over time in terms of the number of staff. Yeah, so I mean, I do this all the time and I get into facts and figures and statistics, so forgive me if I go too much into it, but I'd be happy to respond to any questions that you have about how we arrived at the numbers, because it's kind of a deep dive of the data. But yeah, maybe that's enough. I think that, yeah, again, with that, I'll just let it rest and I can respond to any questions you might have about that.
All right. I'll turn it back over to the city manager now. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. First of all, let me thank everyone who came up and spoke today. I really appreciate it. And we do have our grants manager here as well as our legislative analyst. And I failed to mention that they will also still be reaching out to our partners in order to get revenue. We have a great relationship with our state representatives. Not only was the governor here and helpful during Ian and after Ian, but whether it's Buchanan, Reuters, or Stubbe or Grant, they all look at Northport as somewhere that needs help and they provide help. So we look forward to working with them in the future. But I hope that you heard the message of the evening, which was that we cannot and will not kick the can down the road. You know, I hear people say, well, why wasn't this done 5 years ago or 8 years ago? And the answer is, it doesn't matter, because you can't go back and change it. So we need to focus on what we have in front of us, which is a tall task. So we're not here to tell you how to vote. If this gets to the point of being on a referendum, all we care about is that you do vote, because we want your voice to be heard. So saying all that, if you would like to make a public comment or come and ask us a question for answer, please just come to the microphone, line up behind that speaker, and we'll go from there. Yes, sir.
My name is Craig Beal. I live directly across the canal from the property that's being addressed. No one from the city has ever contacted me. I've lived there for 27 years. All these pictures you have don't depict what's there. My house and my property is directly across the street from where you're proposing to build a garage, a central energy plant with a chiller running 24/7, 365, and all the other amenities. And nobody has ever asked me. I personally have been down here defending my rights as a property owner when the developer you bought that property from has tried to rezone it 3 times. Nobody ever called me. When that man bought that property, he bought it under the intention from general development that it would remain residential. I have the warranty deed. So when is somebody going to come talk to the neighbors that live across the canal? Is that a valid point?
Yeah, Mr. Gill, yes, thank you for that. And that is a
There's
valid point.
copy
And I
of
think
the
that we do
aerial
need
from
to
the tax
make sure we come
appraisal
out and talk to the people who will be affected by this development when it does happen. Absolutely.
Good evening, Valdi Hollander. What I heard over here is very juvenile presentation. Everything is about assume, presume, imply. How many criminals we have right now in Northport? Are you assume that if new people coming in, there are criminals coming as well? Here, 82,237 calls for service. Is there some calls when the crimes occurred? What is that? Are you telling me this 82,453 calls were about the crime or something else? Come on, guys.
Do you have a question that
You only talking about the piling up the cost. What caused the crime in this society? Maybe you guys make too much money. Maybe it's very little money for the people to make the living. Maybe you are the problem. Because I am not, and never be a criminal. And I'm paying the money for police, for their fat salaries.
Where's the timer when you need
I
it?
think this is disgusting.
Thank you for your feedback.
Amen to what he said. My name is Andrew Sheets. I'm a civil rights activist for free speech and free press. And who's keeping us safe from them? I agree with them. Our founding fathers fought for freedom, not for everything to be illegal. If you weren't out policing for profit all the time, you'd have plenty of police here to respond to all your calls. Our founding fathers didn't fight for everything to be illegal and to police for profit. We have the third most amount of people in jail and prison than the whole rest of the world right here in Florida. In America, we have the most amount of people in jail and prison than the whole rest of the world. And we're supposed to be a free country. How do you say we're a free country when that's going on? We have issues here already. Some people know about it. They used to enjoy bragging to each other about their dogs eating people, and they've been sued multiple times for it. We just had a latest issue with here, a civil rights violation by Chief Todd. I go to your police festival, ask for a hot dog, and Chief Todd says, I can't have one because I report bad news on Northport. So then I try to file a report for an internal affairs investigation for him violating my civil rights. Nobody will get back to me. I had to look up the city manager's information on Ben Verified and personally call him on his personal phone to finally get something done. Supposedly did an internal affairs investigation, never called me about it, and I've asked for it, still haven't received it. So amen to what that man said. I agree, this is out of control. Everybody's not a criminal. Everything is not supposed to be illegal. We're supposed to be a free country, not an uncontrolled military police state. Thank you.
Thank you for your feedback. Let me be a little bit more specific. Do you have public comments about the police headquarters?
Okay, this one's for you, Alfred. What's the name of the insurance company for the police department?
Do not know.
You don't know? Does anybody here know that works here? No? Did you receive the insurance money for the police department from Ian? Did you get any money from the insurance company? Does anybody know that answer?
Nope. Next question.
Do we have any unsolved murders or rapes in the city of Northport?
Next question.
Why nobody can answer that one either?
Ma'am, next question, please.
Okay, let's see here. How many bids did you take for this new police department?
I don't think we're in that part of the process yet. I believe we're just in the design phase. We're not even in the.
How many
award phase.
designers did you go through? Just one?
He selected one, but you don't do multiple times.
Is that right? I would think you would do multiple designs, because this one is huge. And I went on the internet and Googled that it's going about $580 a square foot to build something. So how much is it for your building a foot? Can you tell me that? But I'm still asking Alfred here, how much is it per square foot?
She's going to provide that.
Well, I think our city manager should know that answer. How much is it per square foot for this new building?
You can either answer your question or we can move on. Take a pick.
Oh, okay, because you can't answer anything, but we're paying your salary.
Yes, you are.
Okay.
So
Mhm.
am I.
Okay. Okay, how much is it per square foot?
So it has a range depending on each respective position in the building that we've kind of done estimates based on historical data. It's sitting around $650 to $700 a foot, depending on which area you're at within the building.
Well, it says that it should be only $580 a square foot. I mean,
So
a square
when-
foot we're talking about,
So a standard construction
$580.
project might be around the $500 foot mark, but when you have to have a hardened building, when you're this close to the shore, you have to have a level E building, which means that all of the exterior facade must be rated to that level E. So you have to have a notice, an NOA approved from the state of Florida that exterior product has been tested and complies with that, as well as all of the components necessary to keep it operational during an event or a level E
Okay,
building.
where's our highest crime rate at in Northport?
And I can provide you with all that statistical data, but our highest reported crime rate would be along the 41 corridor.
So why isn't the police department being built where the highest crime area is at?
Well, the police department services everything. Okay,
And
we
it's
have-
commercial on 41. You're kind of going into residential now.
We have police officers that patrol that area.
Mhm.
And where this police department is strategically placed, it actually is going to be more towards the center of Northport as Northport's built out. And being near I-75 is going to be easily traverse east and west in the city.
So I called Lehigh Acres because they have 93 square miles. We have a little over 100 square miles. And they're building a police department for $28.7 million, and they're funding it through the American Rescue Plan Act. Have you ever heard of that? And state appropriation funds. Have you heard of that? You're the city manager. You're the one who's supposed to do all the research before we're going to build something, right?
Ma'am, I just told you before you even came up to that podium that we were reaching out to the state for appropriations. So you should already know the answer to that question. Can you please keep your questions to one that you know that we can reasonably answer to help you?
Well, I
Because whatever
thought all
help you
these
need-
would be reasonable to answer.
Well, I think you were
Yeah.
mistaken.
Oh, I
Keep
guess I
going,
am.
please.
I guess I am. Okay, so that's all I've got.
Sir, we have lots of questions online from the audience as well, if you'd like to mix any of those in with the in-person questions.
Yes, go ahead.
Sure. So Samantha Moon on Facebook asks, if there are other designs, are they cheaper than the one the city is going with? And I know we've touched on this already, but where would the new facility be located at?
So we do have various models that we were presented from the design consultant a few weeks ago. It went from 122 million to 100 million to 78 million. They decreased in value as they decreased in footprint size for the main building, as well as shelf space for future build-outs and other assets that were included in the total price. And the location is over, as we show on the board, which you may not be able to see, but it's over off of Toledo Blade, right past 75.
Clinton Edward asks, has there been any thoughts to building in phases, taking care of immediate and 5-year needs in phase 1, then future phases would allow for lower initial costs, meet needs as they come down the road, and then allow for planning and alternative plans to be made as growth comes?
So that is something that we discussed during the planning process. The challenge with phasing a project is when you build out a portion of it and then you go to build out the second phase of that portion, you're going to be disrupting the operation of the rest of the facility. In addition to that, having the phased construction means that you're going to be operating in various locations, disrupting the efficiency of the department itself as it's kind of going through its day-to-day operations. And if you postpone building out different phases, the cost for construction is going to increase for each one of those phases as you go down the path. I think what we've experienced is about approximately a 6% increase of escalation per year that you would see. So phasing in that manner would just be very disruptive to the entire operation and more costly to the taxpayers.
I think the other thing about phasing is it needs to be thought about in response to the rate of growth. And a 5-year increment wouldn't really address the needs of growth that Northport has been and will continue to be experiencing. It really goes to what Aaron is saying, where it's kind of an inefficient use of money. You're going to end up paying more because you're doing these additions on a frequent basis of a significant size, all because of the rate of growth.
Another thing to consider, if you have to build on, building codes change over time. And if you build onto that building or have to retrofit that building in a way that exceeds 50% of its value, you have to bring the entire building up to code, which increases the cost exponentially.
We have several more online, but perhaps we could alternate and go to an in-person question and switch back and forth.
Hi, Lori Harris here. Clinton, that was an awesome question. It was my first part question, so you took care of that for me. The second part of my question is, what else are we looking at in the future that we're going to need to be asking for? I know you talk a lot about the people that will be working at this facility. How much is that going to be projected in the future? Is our fire department going to be asking this for this also? Are they going to need to have bigger areas, more room?
So we have a capital improvement project list that is quite extensive. It has a lot of infrastructure needs for the city, whether it's facilities, roads, bridges, the fire department. Their most recent need is for an emergency operating center, which was originally paired with this project, but we were able to pull it out and pay for it separately to make sure they have what they need now. But your point is there's going to be a lot of needs, whether they're high-cost vehicles that they need to keep up with the staffing that they're adding, but the infrastructure and capital costs of the city are a lot.
Yeah, I imagine so. So Clinton asked most of my question, and that was well answered, so thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So we have Rudy Triana on Facebook, and he asks, how will the new police headquarters better prepare in regards to assistance for hurricanes in comparison to the old one?
Well, the new police station will be built to modern code, and it'll be a hardened facility, so it'll withstand those storms a little bit better than what this current one was dealt with us.
What does it mean when you say hardened facility? What does that specifically mean?
So it's a little bit of everything. It's all the exterior materials that they have tested assemblies for. Maybe it's the metal panels that go on the facade, or it's the window system that goes on the front door. In addition to that, you have stricter guidelines when it comes to the attachments of various things, from roof trusses to your walls to the doors and windows of the entire outside of the facility. It makes it a hardened structure. It's more protected against missile impacts that come from the hurricane and weather intrusion.
My name's Alan Ream. I want to just say that we've had a couple of instances where we needed to call for police support, and you guys were there very quickly and took care of the problem. So I appreciate that. I guess my question is more on the millage rate. We bought down here in 2010, and when prices were really low, but we've seen a skyrocket of value that went up. How is it going to be handled if we get like a 33% haircut in property values? Is there some kind of
Make sure I understand. Our finance team is debating.
So in the event that property values go down, the actual rate for this capital improvement millage would go up because the debt service would remain the same. So the payment remains the same. So property values down, that rate will go up to support the same debt service.
okay. Thank you.
We have a question from William English on Facebook, and Chuck asks, what is a list of assets considered for sale or being sold? Also, what CIP projects will be affected by transfer of the surtax to the project?
So the CIP projects are separate from the surtax project. So there are two different lists that we operate off of. And the projects that are being up for sale are property that the city owns. We shared a list with the commissioners, and we went over, we shared a very brief list with the commissioners. It might have been only 7 or 8 projects, and they were some of the higher end projects. And our team still has to go through that list, as well as some other lists, to see if there is some rational decisions for them to choose from in that selection.
My name is Tammy Ream, and I had actually communicated with the city manager and commissioners about talking about this project because I feel there was a lot of misunderstandings of what it meant and how it was, and so I'm glad that you guys are doing this. One of the things that I had heard at one of the meetings about this was that the millage rate for property taxes would increase for it. Is that off the table now since you found money other places?
So the millage rate that we're proposing to increase would be built on a $35 million borrowing for that bond. And if you have a $200,000 tax value home, not your market price of your home, your taxable value of your home, it would be $51 a year. But the price of the project is $100 million. Our job was to bring it down as low as possible for you, so we didn't ask you for $100 million, and that's where we're at.
Okay, what happens if the bond doesn't pass?
Well, if the bond doesn't pass, then we would still need to figure out a way to keep the community safe.
Okay, thank you.
We have a question from Ann Vandy on Facebook, and she asks, does this 120 million include everything on the aerial picture just shown of the campus? I thought I read somewhere that fueling station and some other things were on the possible list. Also, are we contracted at that number? Because usually things get more expensive as you are building and it ends up costing more.
So the first part of the question, is the fueling station a part of that number? Yes, it is. This is an estimate that we had put together with our team, trying to, based on historical data. We've tried to build in the fact that there will be escalation as this process goes on. Right now, as City Manager mentioned, we are in the design phase. We just did the advanced schematic. That's the imagery that you're seeing here. 122 million is based on that. We are still going through the next round where we will further develop the plans, and we will work with a CM partner to really kind of hone in and get a better understanding of all the numbers and the nuances of the project. But as of today, yes, that fueling station's in there and escalation is accounted for.
She said, are we contracted at that number? Because usually things get more expensive as you're building.
So there will be a bid process at the end of the entire design phase. So as we work through the process with our CM partner and with the city and the department, we'll take those plans after they're hit that 100% construction document phase. It'll go back to commission for final approval, and then we will construct and be under contract at that time.
Because I got some stuff to say here that might take a little while.
We can do that. Joe Caligori asks, has there been any thoughts of building a second building, splitting the offices and services?
Well, we currently have a separate building. We have a Wellen Park substation. We also have a substation attached to Station 82. But when you start looking at adding additional buildings onto this project or onto any department, you're starting to duplicate your services. So the team did look at that, and it was going to cost a lot more money to actually operate in a precinct or district type operation.
I am Vanessa Carasone. I am a longest serving commissioner here in the city of Northport to date, historically. I was here when we planned the current facility of City Hall campus. So I'm going to start with giving you some information because I love what one of our hired guns, not sure who you are, said. Collect the facts. The facts are, in 2001 and 2002, we began planning this City Hall complex. We had approximately 23,000 to 27,000 people in this city. We expected to have that facility, police department, handle about 78,000 population. Think about that. We are far beyond the 78,000. In addition, during that time frame, we had an interim city manager who put in over 100 change orders just to the building alone, without the input of the departments. With that said, in 2006, when we opened those doors, we knew right away that we were at a deficit. We knew that we had to do something to address the issues within the police department because the forensics team were working out of what used to be a storage space. We knew there were problems. So what we did was we tried to start something called substations, and we started one on Pan American Boulevard, planned one for West Villages, now Wellen Park. We were talking about putting one out on the east side in conjunction with the fire department. So we did address phase one. In addition to that, we also made sure that we had kind of had this idea that the absolute city center was Toledo and Price. We knew that if you look at the map, the center of the city of Northport is Toledo and Price. So while City Hall was fantastic, we also knew that was ultimately going to be a problem in the long run. And if we could, we would have a city center that was truly the heart of the city on Toledo Blade. So the location of this actually falls in place with the plans back in the day. I'll say the day. I won't date it. It was around 2006. It was 2010 that the police department was showing signs of space issues. But by 2019, it was brought to our attention that we were getting to a crucial part where the department needed to expand. we discussed extensively in a budget amendment, if I remember correctly, about renting out space in a storage facility that was being newly built because there were different types of evidence that have long-term legal requirements to hold on to them. At that time, I had suggested that we really need to bite the bullet, pun is intended, by the way, and we need to plan on getting this station up and running because this was not going to help us in the long run with the growth that we were seeing. That was kind of told to us that at the time we would look at some properties. I'm not sure how it went after that because I left in 2019. So that was kind of the impetus. But from that point forward, I ran as fast as I could because I am a recovering politician. So we knew at the time that there were going to be issues. I am very happy to see that we finally have something on the books. Now, I do not agree with some of the financial aspects to it as to how to fund those. But with that said, I want to address some issues. Surtax on Toledo Blade, the widening where the specific congestion is being held will not be affected by moving that surtax money because the congestion right now is at that interchange of I-75 on-ramp and off-ramp, and that is actually handled by FDOT. And that is on the books to be fixed. So I don't want anyone to think by postponing that surtax, it's going to create a problem furthermore on Toledo Blade, because it's not. The congestion issue specifically lies within FDOT's realm of fixing, and it's already being addressed. The other thing is that while impact fees, yes, there's some legal loopholes and changing them merely needs a study that actually justifies those fees to be increased. It doesn't mean that you can't use some of those impact fees to shift that balance and reduce that bond that's needed. So if you take some of the surtax, you take some of the grant money, you take whatever else you can get from the state or the federal government, good luck, God bless, not me, and you reduce it, then that $50 a year is going to be reduced. So please don't look at that as the final number, because it's not. We are so far beyond saying this is the finality. Even the planning of this and the design of this is not final. You still have people who will put their 2 cents in. You still have people who are going to discuss how they want to see it. And this plan is going to change. You still have to rezone. And in the rezoning, you will get a mailing order, and it will say that you have a public meeting, and you will be able to come up to the public, and you'll be able to explain that you want buffers. And buffers are required. And buffers will be put up so that they don't impact the residents. So I don't want people to think that this is the end all and be all. But I do want people to understand it is necessary. It's not a need. It's not a want. This is a need. We have been far behind the 8 ball for a very long time. And it's time to step up, because guess what? Construction is not getting cheaper, folks, and neither is our population.
Thank you, ma'am.
We have several questions related to substations, and I know Chief Garrison talked about that, but here's one from Eric Swope. Eric asks, did you look into purchasing the building on 41 near Wendy's and using it as a substation? Or why not portables for office staff and other employees? If schools use portables, then why not the police department? Response time to Northport from down south will take longer. Spread the coverage out.
So that building is not a hardened facility, so during hurricanes, that would not do us any good. You got to remember that we house a emergency dispatch center also that receives 911 calls from the county. So that building needs to be protected. The building that he's referring to is absolutely not large enough for a police station. And so it's not a viable option to even look at. Oh yeah, and the portables, we're actually in the process of bringing in portables to our current police station to help with the temporary overflow right now. So, but you got to remember, portables are not hardened facilities. They're not safe during hurricanes or storms, and so that's not a viable option either.
Thank you. Jill Luke, we have a whole lot of departments using portables right now, and some of their buildings were hurt a whole lot worse. So I don't pick favorites, though I know and have known for a long time that the police department needed a new headquarters. But because we've known it for quite a while, to me, we didn't plan properly. And I don't believe lack of planning constitutes an emergency on everybody else. First question is the location of the 19. I was out of state for a little while, so that was when this property was purchased. According to Vanessa, it has to be rezoned, but is it considered in the estates?
Yes.
Because the estates cannot have utilities brought to it. So I'm wondering how we're going to hook to utilities if it's actually part of the estates.
I would have to look at the plats, but I don't believe that that particular property is restricted from having utilities hooked up. And utilities actually exist now across the street from it, so there is an easy connection there.
Okay. The cost to bring the utilities in then, is that figured within?
Yes.
It is?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you, sir. Going over to the $51 thing, is that actually being worked into the millage, or is it a separate fee, such as we approve for our roads to be fixed and we pay about, I think it's $25 or something a year. We approve Legacy Trail, that's another $16 that's added to our property tax. So is this another bond that we vote on, or is it worked into the millage?
It's a bond that you vote on that will be a separate line item on your statement.
Okay, thank you. Another question, that is based upon a 200,000 taxable value. What's the median of taxable value? I mean, because I know some of the older homes that were purchased, a while back, yes, they're low, but we've got a whole lot of people who just moved in to West Village and some of the higher scaled HOAs, and I'm a little bit afraid of the thousands of dollars that they're going to have to expend.
So the average is just a little bit over 200,000 taxable value.
Is there a cap put on household of any sort, or will some people have to pay hundreds yearly?
So there's no cap. There's all of the exemptions. Homestead exemption would still apply, but this is calculated after homestead exemption when you get down to the taxable value. But there would be no cap. We can look into that, yeah.
Because you have $500,000 homes, and up Lake Geraldine, and a lot of these other places have mega. I mean, some of them out in the estates are valued at really high. So I would hate to see that fall upon them. My next question is, how long would this bond last? How many years are we talking about that the people would pay?
That was calculated on 40 years.
40?
40 years.
Yeah, those higher valued homes adds up to a lot. I think, this is my comment, I think the police department has needed a new headquarters, but I don't think that going way out into the future at this point in time is good for the economy of our people. I mean, we still got blue roofs out there. We got people who can't get, insurance to fix their house up and stuff. So I don't know as the economy is in the right place for us to look at 2065. And when you build a building, even if it's a shell, that starts depreciating the minute that you put it up. And I don't really know anybody that wants to fix up a 30 or 40-year-old structure and put everything in it when your exterior has even hardened. It's still that age. So I would recommend looking and not putting on the backs of the people as much as possible. My next question is, if this is capped at a 35 million, where's the rest of the money coming from?
That's 35 million?
No, you've got 35, and if that's what you're asking the citizens for,
Yes.
over 40 years, where's the remainder of whatever? I mean, is the 122 million solid, or?
So we referenced the 50 million insert tax, which would get you to 85. And then we referenced the sale, or what we do with the the police station, the current building. We're trying to make sure we sell that one way or the other. And also, we have property that we are trying to identify to see if it could be sold for this purpose as well.
From other departments, property that's probably owned by or
Just
had
city.
planned
Yeah.
for other projects in the future through other departments.
We would not put something that the city staff would not recommend based on a future need on the list unless it was viable.
Okay, a need is for our youth sports programs out on Italy Avenue. I would hate to see that go. Another Morgan Center out on that end of town. Commissions have talked about that for years, getting that side of the town addressed, and I would hate to see that fall through. We just voted in phase 4 of surtax. That was for 15 years. So what in that 50 million is going to be taken out of future projects in the next 15 years?
Price Boulevard widening phase 2 was moved from the end of surtax 4 to the beginning of surtax 5.
So phase 2, correct me if I'm wrong, goes from Sumter over past the schools.
To Biscayne.
That is, if you've ever been down there with those schools, and we're looking at the city increasing, and that means your schools are going to be increasing, that traffic is going to be increasing. We have talked about it again for years on the commission of that phase. The other phase is not as necessary, but that portion, you're talking about pushing it off for 15 years.
Right.
To set a future.
It's already planned 10 plus years out from right now. So we believe that prioritizing the police station for today's needs outweigh 10 years of waiting to widen the boulevard.
So 10 years of growth, and it could have been moved up too for that if we were building and growing and anticipating everything. And has anybody ever thought that we might have a recession? And one gentleman brought up about the property taxes going down. I don't know, I just think we're personally biting off more than our citizens can chew, and we're setting aside too hastily the future in all departments and in all projects. Not that I don't want them to have a building, but if you've got 50 million and 35, that more than covers that 78 million.
let me address one aspect of the question and comments. Keep in mind that as we have more construction, more properties are developed, especially with commercial and non-residential uses, the amount that is being paid in millage goes up, and more of that cost would be borne by our commercial and non-residential property owners than our residential property owners. So if we were to have a recession 10 years from now, we have to take into account that between now and that 10 years, we've had an exponential amount of growth that is helping to pay for that. So it wouldn't necessarily mean that homeowners now have to pay more. That difference is very likely to be made up by the growth that occurs between now and then. And we do have an exponential growth rate that is significant, and we're adding quite a bit to our tax rolls based on commercial growth now.
Yeah, just quick comment on a thing. Came with a lot of questions because this was the first I had heard of a process that's been going on, obviously, for at least a year. But one of the speakers spoke of a concern of what happens when property values go down, which, although I've never been a realtor, I've had an experience in real estate. And anybody who thinks you're going to have a long-term drop in real estate doesn't know their history, and any expert, I think, would feel they're sort of off base. I'm very pleased about one thing, though, that I'm seeing in the projections. Our projections are pointing to increased growth, causing increased needs. But until this last speaker, no one has ever raised the fact that when population goes up, properties go up. You aren't going to get a lot more. We're already saturated in our housing market as far as people per house. If our population is going to double, the number of tax-paying homes, to say nothing of industrial tax base, is going to go up. And nowhere have I seen them counting on, no matter how likely it is, the fact that we're going to have an increased tax base over the years to support the increased costs over the years.
We're seeing several comments online about what's going to happen to the current police station. Rudy asks, will the police station by City Hall become a substation or entirely something else? There's also some questions remaining about the sale of that building, and maybe we could clarify what we mean by the sale of that building, because we've also talked about it being used by other city departments and services.
Yes, so I think the future of the building determines on which model of a number of a final price the commission decides upon. Every model that we have presented includes us getting the current police out of the current station into the new station. And then the substation, the station they're in now, would more than likely be sold, either externally or used internally through funds that we could use to actually have other staff in that building.
One was selling the property. I never have agreed with selling the property. I think it's poor planning. It is obvious that we have growth deficiencies as it is. You're going to need that building for other departments, maybe even the expansion of this city hall and the departments within it. I just think it's not a wise move because it's never been intended to be parceled out. It was always supposed to be part of a city complex, period. The other properties, as Commissioner Luke had said, they all do have intents to them. May not be on the books for capital planning, but there has been intention to make sure that the same services that are addressed on the east side are addressed on the west side or west and east, and now I'm all screwed up on that one. But anyways, my biggest problem is not understanding the $35 million bond being affixed to millage. As I understand it, unless things have changed drastically, the bond is almost like having a loan. The loan is for X amount of dollars. That X amount of dollars, just like Legacy Trail, and thank you, Commissioner, for bringing this up, just like Legacy Trail is X amount of dollars for X amount of time, just like the road bond. That has nothing to do with our millage rate. It's this is how much, this is the interest rate, this is the length. Please explain how it connects to the millage rate.
So this would be a separate capital improvement millage, and yes, it would adjust. As we've said, property values, as they go up, that millage rate goes down because the payment stays the same.
So it's a capital improvement millage,
Correct.
not a bond.
Well, we would issue bonds to finance to bring in the 50 million in the beginning. So there will be bonds, and the revenue source that we use to pay them back would be a capital improvement millage. So if we only did the capital improvement millage, then we'd have to wait 40 years to have the full amount to have the full 50 million. So
Right.
rather than wait 40 years, we would start the capital improvement millage, and then we issue bonds, and we pay back those bonds with what's generated from the capital improvement millage.
So borrowing X amount of dollars and then paying it back through a line item bond is no longer utilized. I'm just like Legacy Trail, that's not a capital improvement bond or millage. Has nothing based off of our millage rate. It's X amount of dollars.
So I'm not familiar with any bonds there. There's a lot of different ways to issue debt, bonds, bank loans, and depending on the revenue source you're going to use to pay those back, it would be a different structure. We're talking about law enforcement activities. That's not something we can assess. So our options are for a capital improvement for them would be this capital improvement millage, paying from the general fund. That's
No, I get it. It's just that you have a finite amount of money you're going to borrow, period.
correct.
That finite amount of money has nothing to do with whether it's for the police department, for city hall, for a road, for anything else. So I guess that my suggestion would be finding different avenues and different ways and means that it's not attached to the millage rate. That's it. Thank you.
We have one from Facebook. This is related to the conversation about Price Boulevard again. Why don't you just flip the phases and do the school end first, the phase 2 of Price Boulevard?
Chuck Speak, Public Works Director. The phase 1 that runs between Toledo, Glade, and Sumter was where the traffic studies show that the project needed to start. That's where we received the most traffic and the most congestion.
And Chuck, just a follow-up or a related question, and just to clarify for people, Christine asks, let me get this straight. Are they going to move the phase of widening the roads so they can build this $122 million police station?
As the city manager said, phase 1 between Toledo Glade Boulevard and Sumter Boulevard will continue on schedule. The only thing we're moving out is the funding for Phase 2, which will run between Sumter and Biscayne. And that wasn't scheduled to even start for about the next 10 years. So that project may shift.
Hey, I'm Kate. I have a couple of questions, actually. Is 122 million, is that estimated or set amount, or it could increase as you build, when you have additional expenses? So we see in 122, but then at the end of the project, it could end up with a 200. So where is can you tell me, is that a breakdown? What would be the cost for materials versus, labor? Is that a breakdown somewhere?
So right now, it's a high-level advanced schematic estimate. So we would still continue to work towards it. We built in some contingency, and that's what some of those other project costs are. That's in that line item. As we're going through the process, that would be the limit, 122. As the project goes on, we're baking in that escalation into the project. So as we go through the process, if for some reason something like that were to occur, that would be something that we would work as a team to keep it at the 122 million, and finding out what elements might then have to be postponed for another time. Or
Because we all have seen the increase of the material cost when you build a house or buying materials, so the cost of the materials currently is already high. So later on, if it's going to go even higher, it's going to be more additional expenses. If that's going to happen or not. Okay, and also a question, do you have a list, or can you provide a list of all the financing, bonding, loans options available to the city for this type of project or improvement? And then last question, can you explain or provide the current building needs or issues? What is the problem with the current building? I know it's small, but is there anything else that's going on with the current building or you have issues with?
so the one thing that I can quickly speak to is that the current building does not meet the
Beside
current
that.
code. So it's not a hardened facility. It's also smaller than the capacity that they need just for today. But that's a high
But
level.
is that affecting your job, is it affecting anyone's job to do their job properly or get everything done in time or, so.
So good evening, Kim Humphrey. I'm a project manager with the city of Northport. And currently we're going through a lot of Hurricane Ian repairs. And if anyone has seen an aerial lately of our PD building, you'll know that we lost over 25% of the roofing tiles. So that's one current problem with the building. It's not hurricane hardened.
Okay, so the roofing hasn't been taken care of?
We are getting ready to replace the roof, but as you mentioned, we talked about the undersizing, which PD can talk more about.
Is there anything else wrong? I mean, I know it's small and not up to codes, but I know you guys have cells that are currently being used for the storage, right? So are you is there anything that affecting your everyday job duties?
Well, we're out of space for people to actually have office space to do their job. So we are displaced everywhere. We have converted every conference room that we could to office space, every closet that we could to office space. So, is it affecting people's job to get their job done? Yes, it is.
Thanks.
That's all the questions we're seeing right now in the queue. We'll continue to answer those that come in on our Facebook and YouTube page. And we'd also like to encourage all the viewers online and here in person to visit NorthPortFL.gov /PoliceHQ. We've got a lot of FAQs on that site that we'll continue to keep updating as this project evolves.
Thank you.
One final question. We're thinking residential, but this also makes the businesses pay according to their assessed value too, correct?
Yes.
So both residential and commercial. Do we think those thousands of dollars being added to their property tax would maybe hinder people from coming to the city?
We do not. We believe that adding that to their property value tax will allow them to be safer in their business in this community.
I believe they're safe because they've got all the, I'll just shut up with that. But it's just a whole lot of money for residential and commercial, and they need it, but I just don't think they need 122 million worth.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate it. Thank you to the team, our stakeholders, all our speakers tonight. We appreciate the feedback. Have a good night.